The age-old debate of difficulty in video games is back, just like it is every time a popular game is released that happens to have a high level of difficulty. But it's been over a week now since this discussion was reignited, and it doesn't seem to be going away. In fact, this time it feels different. This time, those asking for an easy mode seem to be winning the argument. So much so that even YouTubers who once spoke out in favour of games not having to include difficulty modes are going back to their old videos and saying they no longer agree with their past statements. Apparently, at long last, we have finally got to the stage where games really do need an easy mode in many people's eyes. But that's wrong. No game needs an easy mode, and we'll get to that. But first, why has opinion started to change now? Was Sekiro really that hard? Well, no, it's just that those who believe every game should have an easy mode have finally found the most effective argument: accessibility for disabled gamers. Before talking specifically about that, it's worth pointing out that this debate has been going on for at least 10 years, where it has been framed in many different ways. You had this article in 2009 saying all sections of games should be skippable because you're allowed to skip forwards in movies, so games should be the same. In 2013, Kotaku put up an article saying all games need a very easy mode because of young people and people who've never played a game before. In 2016, Dark Souls 3 needed an easy mode because how else could you convince your casual friends to try it otherwise? In 2017, it was all about elitism and gatekeeping, and now here we are in 2019, and apparently this is all about disabled gamers. Despite the fact that the same people asking for an easy mode in the past didn't mention disabled gamers once back then. But hey, if this whole controversy is generating increased awareness for the problems disabled gamers face, then that's not a bad outcome. But the truth is, most issues disabled gamers face aren't directly tied to game difficulty. And while accessibility for disabled gamers is a real issue, it's one that's complex, and I think has a specific solution that we'll come back to later. For now, let's talk about what this is really about. The thing that always underpinned every argument throughout the years, the one constant. Should every game be designed for all players? It's a legitimate question to ask. The answer is no, but it's still a question worth asking. The reason not every game should be designed for every person is because in doing so, some games would lose something. Part of what makes them enjoyable, part of what makes them special. But wait, hold on. Apparently, an easy mode has never ruined a game. By adding an easy mode, there is nothing to be lost but plenty to be gained. Easy modes take away nothing from the intended experience. These statements come up a lot, but they're not true. Ruined is a strong word, but there's no evidence that adding easy modes haven't made some games worse. There's no evidence that the addition of an easy mode hasn't meant some games don't live up to their full potential, because difficulty can serve a purpose. Difficulty can be part of the intended experience. Difficulty can be part of a narrative. Difficulty can make a connection between story and gameplay in a way that's unique to games, and difficulty can create a shared experience that leads to community. All of these things matter. Look at Dark Souls. Challenge was intended to be a core part of the experience, a means to provide the sense of accomplishment, which is a key part of the creator's vision. But the difficult gameplay also says a lot about the setting. It's a world that is falling into ruin where hope is all but lost. It's dark and dangerous and desolate, and you're able to feel these things because the game is difficult and punishing and does force you to figure things out for yourself. You didn't need to read every item description to care about the story and be drawn into this experience. Just existing in this world and struggling to find your way felt like it had meaning. Still, even more unique to Dark Souls was that the difficulty did create a community. Dark Souls wasn't just a game people played, it was a game people talked about. Even people who didn't talk about games that often wanted to talk about their experiences. People wanted to compare what they found challenging. They wanted to share memes, discuss lore, create guides, perfect strategies. Dark Souls is not even close to being one of the best-selling games of the last decade, but it might be the most talked about, and it might be the most loved. So what would have happened if there was an easy mode? Well, having an easy way out when faced with a challenge would have led to many people taking it and subsequently missing out on that sense of accomplishment, the thing that was a core part of the game. The themes of the story would have been diluted just by having the knowledge that difficulty is optional, and the shared experience would no longer be shared. People's experiences would vary based on the difficulty they chose, and there would no longer be one single discussion for everyone to join in with. Discussion would instead be fragmented. But what about the value of choice? Isn't choice also inherently valuable? Isn't the trade-off that people can tailor their experience to suit them also important? Well, choice isn't always good. The Forbes writer who kicked this all off said that not giving players a choice of difficulty shows a lack of respect, because it suggests that players cannot be trusted with their own gameplay experience, that even those who want a challenging game would somehow be lured by the siren song of lower difficulties and destroy their own experience because they're too impatient or immature to know what they actually want. But that might happen. Lower difficulties provide temptation. I've seen a lot of people mocking the idea that supposed hardcore players might be tempted by lower difficulties. But why is that silly? Temptation is very real. It's not pathetic to be tempted by things, it's normal. We're often tempted by various things that are bad for us, and removing temptation is often a great solution. If you're worried about overeating, removing snacks from your house can help. If you procrastinate too much, switching off the internet or trying to get work done in the library rather than your house can be the solution to your troubles. If you have a drinking problem, avoiding areas where others are drinking can be vital. Removing temptation can have great benefits because humans really like instant gratification, but instant gratification doesn't always provide the best long-term benefits. Why should games be different? I know I find abusing quick saves tempting at times, even though I think they can have a very negative effect on a gaming experience by removing the consequence of player choices. I don't want to save scum, and usually I don't, but sometimes I do, and sometimes I wish certain games would just remove the temptation to create a better overall experience. To be tempted by a lower difficulty is something a lot of people will likely feel. I'm sure many people who have been struggling with certain bosses in Sekiro recently would have switched difficulty if they could. Some of those people may have just given up, but I'm sure lots have instead persisted and triumphed and are ultimately grateful that there wasn't an easy way out, and that they did get to experience the accomplishment of overcoming a challenge through hard work and skill. And, by the way, just as there's nothing wrong with being tempted by easier difficulties, there's also nothing wrong with feeling a sense of pride over something related to games. Whether it's completing Dark Souls or doing something else, if that makes you feel good about yourself, good for you. I've seen a lot of people implying that feeling pride over a video game is pathetic, that it's proof your life must be valueless, but that's not true. You can feel pride over many things, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Feeling pride over a video game doesn't mean you can't also feel pride over being a good parent or being good at your job. What's more, trying to dictate what other people should and shouldn't feel a sense of pride over is just its own form of elitism. And if your hobbies, gaming or otherwise, give you no sense of pride or accomplishment whatsoever, you need to find some different hobbies, because you're missing out. Still, people don't seem to want to accept that some players just enjoy the difficulty in hard games and care about preserving that experience. There always seems to be sinister ulterior motives attributed to those who are against adding easy modes, that always implies it's really all about exclusion. But where is the evidence of that? The Souls community isn't full of gatekeeping. New players are made to feel welcome. People who admit to being bad aren't made fun of, they're given encouragement. People who ask for advice aren't shamed, they're given helpful answers. The Souls community isn't exclusive, and it doesn't try to be. The other argument about exclusivity focuses on bragging rights. Apparently people only want FromSoft's games to be hard because secretly they just want to boast about how much of a super cool hardcore gamer they are. The thing is, most people don't live within the gaming industry, and as a result, most people don't go around bragging about the hard games they've completed. Most people don't go into work after completing a hard game and then boast to the rest of the office about how much of a real gamer they are, and then go around slapping people's phones out of their hands if they see someone playing a mobile game. In fact, most people don't get any kind of social currency or credibility from playing hard games. For most of us, playing hard games provides no value beyond the enjoyment we get from it. But honestly, I understand why game journalists think this isn't the case, because for them, it's not. You see, most people don't go into work and brag about completing Sekiro, but game journalists might. I mean, it's not hard to find examples of them doing exactly that. For them, completing a hard game really might give them social currency. It might add to their professional credibility. They're expected to know about games, to talk about them. When Game of the Year discussions come around, they're expected to have played the biggest games of the year, to be informed. And by the way, it's the same thing for many gaming YouTubers or other people involved with the industry in some way. Most people don't see games as a checklist they need to get through as part of their job or online persona. But people on the inside of the bubble often do, and maybe that's why they've tried so hard to push the idea of games needing an easy mode. Because an easy mode has practical benefits to them. It allows them to be part of a conversation, and that conversation can be a part of their job. But there's no reason games should be specifically designed to cater to journalists or other gaming professionals as opposed to normal consumers. Still, even if normal people don't go around boasting about how much of a hardcore gamer they are, games with a hard reputation do have a certain appeal, but it's not because they allow elitism. It's because many games make the claim that they offer hard modes, but very few do a good job at delivering on that claim. A lot of games are designed around a specific difficulty, usually normal, and then difficulty modes are created by altering a couple of variables. Just give enemies a flat amount of extra hit points and lower player hit points a bit and call it a day. This does increase difficulty, but it doesn't create a balanced experience. Some games have blatantly obvious design flaws on higher difficulties, but you'll never see them mentioned in professional reviews because reviewers usually don't even try the hardest difficulties out. This means game developers can completely get away with half-arsing difficulty implementation without any impact to their review scores, and so unsurprisingly, that's what some do. So when a game does come along that is specifically designed to be difficult, people who want a challenging experience take note of it. Because they know that its difficulty will have had resources put into making it work well. Because they know that there will have at least been attempts to balance it, to make it fair, to make it fun, and even to use difficulty to support other areas of game design, like as a part of the story, or to heighten the sense of progression, or create atmosphere or add to replayability and so on. But we should take a moment to talk more about difficulty modes themselves. Some games do make the conventional easy, normal, hard difficulty selection work, and they are better for it. But some games don't, and some that choose not to would be worse if they tried to force that standard framework onto their games. Some games benefit by having as many options as possible for the player to tweak to create the experience the player wants. But some games could be hurt by adding so many variables because they would reduce the developer's ability to craft a specific experience. Some games can have one base difficulty set fairly low, but use other features to cater to players who want to do something harder, like adding optional challenges and secret endgame bosses. Some games can use additional features to accomplish the same goals as difficulty can, like using a ranking or scoring system to provide an incentive to improve player skill, or to provide an additional sense of accomplishment. But in other games, ranking and scoring systems would be completely out of place. Some games use systems where difficulty is slowly added over time to allow for a gradual difficulty curve that never stops being challenging. Other games benefit from having a flat difficulty level so that players can feel like they have to struggle at the start but become a master by the time they're done. Some games have used adaptive difficulty settings that react to how well the player does and then tailors the experience accordingly, but other games could never do this and would never want to. Some games are not that difficult but are meant to be very punishing in order to elicit a certain response as part of the experience. Other games are designed to be very difficult but as forgiving as possible to reduce frustration. There are so many ways to do difficulty, and different games will benefit from different methods. Some players might like certain methods and dislike others. Some developers might like certain methods and dislike others. This isn't anything remarkable. Different things appeal to different people. For some, having an easy mode is appealing. For others, not having an easy mode is appealing. One group isn't more right than the other, and what's important is that different experiences are created so that there are games everyone can enjoy. We don't need every game to be enjoyed by every person. The fact that different people have different tastes means this could never be possible. And we don't need every game to try to appeal to as many people as possible either. All that would do is exclude the minority of people who don't enjoy the norm. And by the way, there's already a pretty big market incentive to create things that are mass appeal. Many companies already try to do so, which makes trying to single out the few which don't and demand them to fall in line and stop doing things that make them different is honestly pretty terrible. And that's what we're seeing here. From Software stands out as one of the very few developers creating big budget games that are specifically designed to cater to people who want a challenging experience, where difficulty is meant to be a part of the intended experience. From the intricate boss fights to the punishments for dying to the lack of handholding, these are games created with a specific vision that is different to most modern big budget games, and that's why their fans like them. Asking them to change that, even if you're only asking them to change it slightly, is wrong. It doesn't matter if other games have easy modes. Conforming to certain norms to generate more mass appeal shouldn't be seen as some important goal. Conformity is not a gold standard for media to aspire to, but being different can be. Let's go back to that other important issue here, accessibility for disabled gamers. The reality is, disabled is an incredibly broad label. It includes all sorts of people with all sorts of different problems, and those problems require all sorts of different solutions to actually fix. Everyone wants games to be more accessible for disabled players. We're all in agreement that this is a good thing and that accessibility is a problem. But it's not a simple problem, and mandated easy modes aren't some magic fix-all solution. There will always be elements of game design that can exclude some players. If a game uses any audio indicators, then it's excluding people with hearing impairments, and if a game uses any visual indicators, then it's excluding people with visual impairments. That doesn't mean we need to force games to stop using these things. The unfortunate reality is that all design choices face the risk of excluding someone, and that's not something we can just eliminate. But what we can do is make different games and create different experiences, and praise games which are different, which do take risks, which try to break the mold. Not every game can appeal to everyone, and not every game can be inclusive to everyone. These things are unachievable, but what we can do is ensure all games aren't the same, so that people with different tastes and different needs have at least some experiences that are for them. This benefits people with disabilities and people without. There are hard games that don't include an easy mode which require completely different sets of skills to Dark Souls or Sekiro, and that's a good thing. And there are easy games that incorporate their relaxing difficulty into their design, and that's also a good thing. Difference is the key, and therefore we shouldn't try to change games which stand out by being different by asking them to conform, just because it might broaden their appeal. Sekiro doesn't need an easy mode. Dark Souls didn't need an easy mode, and whatever the next game that comes along that's popular but hard also doesn't need an easy mode. If creators are making what they want to make and fans are enjoying it, then people need to accept that, and if you can't enjoy something without it being fundamentally changed, then maybe you have to accept that this thing is just not for you. If anyone out there has their range of options limited by unfair life circumstances, then they have my sympathy, and I hope they are able to find things that they enjoy. But I think the most realistic way to achieve that is by promoting difference within the industry, not shutting it down. If Sekiro added an easy mode tomorrow, it wouldn't be a tragedy. It's just one feature in one game. But do you know what would be a tragedy? The continued spread of this idea that every game needs to be for every person. They don't. They shouldn't be, and I hope it never will be, because if every game does have to be made for everyone, we'll end up losing a big part of what makes them special.